Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of College Football Showdown, y'all favorite show on Friday across all your sports landscapes and social media. I'm here with my main man, Christian Simpson. I'm your host, Israel Rivera. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, before we start the show, please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and follow me at Izzy underscore at PSW on Twitter or X or whatever the hell you want to call it these days. And in case you missed the live feed, please catch us on all streaming platforms where podcasts can be heard. That's Apple, Samsung, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? My main man, Christian Simpson. We coming here live early. We usually do this around 6, 7, but we going here. We coming here live at 4, 5. So hopefully you guys are listening to us on the way back from work here in rush hour traffic. There's no excuses to not listen to College Football Showdown today, baby.
Nah, it's really not. How you feeling today, man? You all good?
I'm feeling great. I'm feeling great. I'm feeling awesome. It ain't a lot of sunshine, but I feel cool, so I want to put on the shades, baby. Let's
There we go. There we go.
Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, we got an amazing show today, man. Last week was yeah, man, we broke in the leather, man. We got the first NFL game yesterday with the Lions and the Chiefs, but last week we had a plethora of games, a whole full slate of games, Christian.
We did.
Yeah. And so, I got some week one takeaways for you guys. This week's gonna be some big games as well. So, go ahead and lock in y'all parlays or your bets, but make sure that y'all lock in on Saturday, because there's gonna be some good games all throughout the slate, and we'll talk about that as we get to the show. But some of my week one takeaways, Christian, I think the main one is Colorado beating number 17 TCU in Fort Worth, Texas, baby. What are your takeaways from that game? And just the whole week and what it's been all week pretty much for Deion Sanders and company, and the Colorado football program.
Well, it seemed like, not just really paying attention to that game, it just seemed like TCU could never get ahead, because anytime TCU had the lead, Colorado would punch that football right down the field. So that's my biggest takeaway from it right there. Number one. Number two, how about Shedeur Sanders stunting like his daddy? Look, you can't have that last name and not be a slouch. Plain and simple. And I mean, his debut for a D1 school, he throws 510 yards and 4 touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, it just seemed like every look that TCU threw at him, he wasn't rattled by it. He played with a lot of duress, a lot of confidence, and he just felt he could make every pass. But I think one of the other big takeaways was Travis Hunter really doing it on both sides of the ball, effective offensively, got an interception on the defensive side. Prime is really trying to groom this young man into something special. You heard what he said during the little halftime interview. Look, he's him.
He is him.
He is. I mean, and TCU just played horrible defense. They couldn't stop a nosebleed on Saturday.
Yeah. So my thing about so Shedeur. First of all, let me give my flowers out to Shedeur Sanders, because he had the most yards for a Colorado quarterback in his debut. So that's one big shout out. And they've had some great quarterbacks. Cordell Stewart to name one of them, and actually the guy that was calling the game, Joe Klatt, was one of them. Was in the top 5 for Colorado for starting quarterbacks for Colorado with the most yards in the game in their debut. So I got to shout out to Shedeur Sanders, and everything that you said, you hit on the nail on the head. I think people really, honestly, the casual fan, right? They don't really understand how good Shedeur Sanders actually really is, though. He went to HBCU because of his father, primarily. If his father didn't go to an if his father wasn't coaching at Jackson State, Shedeur Sanders was on his way to FAU. Okay, he was a 4-star quarterback recruit out of the state of Texas. Okay, may I say, right? And we all know how good football is in Texas. It's king
Right.
in Texas.
Right.
He was one of the best quarterbacks in the state. So people really got, and if you're listening to this, Shador Sanders is a hell of a quarterback coming out of high school. So that's just one. And he had offers to Florida State too as well. He had offers to Florida State. He had offers to several major D1 programs, but he ended up choosing Jackson State. So this success that I've seen at Colorado, and then the work that he's put in with Tom Brady and other quarterback gurus, I mean, I'm not surprised at what he pulled. We saw he took the baton from Jackson State over to Colorado. I mean, we saw the arm talent at Jackson State for 2 years, and now we're seeing the arm talent here at Colorado, especially against TCU. Now, TCU isn't the greatest. They lost to Georgia by 60 in the national championship game, which their linebacker I can't forget his name, but he said, that they're a laughing stock of college football. I wouldn't say laughing stock because making it to the national championship, playing against a historic defense like Georgia that's a big deal to do. But I think Shador Sanders has solidified himself as one of the best college quarterbacks in the nation just off 1 week, in my opinion. A lot of people had unknowns because a lot of people were like, oh, he's only played against, 1-star recruits, 2-star recruits at Jackson State for the last 2 years. Well, he showed why he was a 4-star recruit out of the state of Texas. That's one.
Yeah.
Travis Hunter, he was the number 1 recruit in the nation. He literally, if there was anybody that had no business going to Jackson State, it was Travis Hunter. Right. Okay, that's one. He really could have went to Florida State or Miami or any school of his choosing. Alabama, LSU, wherever he wanted to go, he could have went and started as a freshman. So that's 2. Travis Hunter is an amazing 5-star player. So the notion of look at the guys came from HBC. No, those guys that went to the HBC, man, they were talented. And that's a testament to Deion Sanders' recruiting ability, right, at Jackson State. So, yeah, Travis Hunter was by far, I mean, I haven't seen anything like it since maybe Charles Woodson. And I think he even did it better than Charles Woodson. I mean, that interception was so, like, that was the best play I've seen in such a long time. The way he read the defense. I mean, the running back was open out on the wheel route in the flat in the backside, and he literally sat, waited, and picked that ball off, took it out of his hands. So, got to give it out. I mean, and there's other guys. I mean, you got the 2 kids from USF, University of South Florida, that bald horn. I forget the other guy's name. They both had 100 yards. And then I got to give it out to the rookie, the freshman running back, who had a hell of a game. That's Dylan Edwards. He's a 4-star recruit too. He was one of the best players coming out of the state of Kansas. 135 yards, receiving, 3 touchdowns. I mean, he was magnificent running the football. He had big plays all over the field. And even Deion Sanders' other son, Shiloh Sanders, had a hell of a game. I mean, he was overshadowed. He had 10 tackles in that game. Played great defense at the safety position.
Yeah, he did. But honestly, Izzy, look, I got to be transparent here. There's 2 glaring issues with Colorado. One, and you and I, we think alike because we're kind of old school when it comes to football. One, they only ran the football for about 54 or 55 yards on 34 carries. So they really couldn't get a consistent ground game going. And number 2, they couldn't stop the run. And teams are going to come in now with that game plan. Look, let's run the football down their throat, as David on point would say, and let's do it until they can stop it. But you can't expect Shador to bail you out and throw for 500 yards every single game. You got to have some type of balance.
That is true. And I mean, they're going to get a test with Nebraska. We saw how we saw how, and we'll get to it, in the games to watch, obviously. And my thing is that Nebraska is a team that is vastly improved under Matt Rule. Just week 1, seeing them against Minnesota, even though they didn't score much defensively, they look improved from last year. I can only imagine once Matt Rule like I said, once he gets his recruits in, offensively, that team's going to be good in another year or 2. But I think when it comes down to it, that's going to be a big test for Colorado, Nebraska coming in, because Matt Rule, he's seen them week 1. He's going to say, hey, we're going to run the ball, until they stop it.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
And when you play a Big Ten team, you know, you better bring your lunch pail because it's gonna be a
yeah,
physical football game. It's gonna be hard hitting.
absolutely.
Izzy, look, you've seen a lot of Big Ten football over the years. You have to be able to put forth a physical effort.
No, absolutely. So that's going to be that. I mean, if Colorado doesn't is not physical in the trenches, if that offensive line is not physical in the trenches, Nebraska could very much have an advantage in the on you know on the in the trenches. So it's going to be interesting this week to see how Colorado responds at home. It's going to be a lot of energy. There's going to be a lot of nerves playing in front of that home crowd. They're going to be super excited. Colorado's ranked. I mean, they went from literally unranked from like the 50s to being in the top 25 just like that. So
Just like that. Yep.
just a lot of now. There's going to be pressure now, right now. So you were the hunter, right, when you went against TCU. Now you're the hunted with Nebraska coming into your house. So let's see how they respond. I'm sure Coach Prime is going to have them ready to go against Nebraska. Next takeaway: Florida State. Is this the best team in college football?
Um, they looked it on on Sunday night against LSU because I just took a phone call for Monday evening quarterback yesterday. Um, and who I was talking to, he's a diehard Florida State fan, and he was like, what was it that Florida State did in your perspective?" And I said, "Look, they ran the football. They were balanced. Izzy, we talk about this all the time. Run the football. It still pays dividends in today's football. I get it's a pass happy game. I get it's a quarterback driven game now, but running the football forces defenses to sit down in that box, and then you can use your play action. You saw it last night with the Lions and Chiefs. Look how they ran that football, and then look how Jared Goff was able to attack the middle of the field, right? But
Mm-hmm.
man, Florida State to me may have the two best, the best tandem of wide receivers in college football, and I'm saying that after week one. You got 6'7" Johnny Wilson. Well, can I do it correctly? His name is
Yes.
Johnny, last
Last
name
name
Wilson.
Wilson.
But how about the Michigan State transfer, Keon Coleman? We were talking about this young man during the game on Sunday, and I told you I see a little DK Metcalf in him. Just the way he goes up for the ball, you can just lock it up, and he goes and gets it. And Florida State was just more adjusted in the second half, and look, Jordan Travis, I have a feeling we're going to see his name in another segment of the show very shortly. But look, that kid can ball. And
Man,
Izzy, you know my rule. You better have game. If you got
if you
two
got
first
two first
names,
names, baby.
it's only right.
You know, I felt I came on here last week and I was like, man, I think Florida State and Jordan Travis were disrespected. The fact that Jordan Travis, I had him in my top 5 Heisman rankings, but not a lot of other people did. They had him as like a dark horse. They had him as the outside looking in. They had Florida State at rank number 8, and obviously, rightfully so. Right, Florida State had to come out and prove themselves against a top 5 opponent defensively. In the first half, they were down, right? They went in the second half 17-14. They were losing that football game. But when it came to the second half, they made Jaden Daniels look, very inconsistent. He looked, even though he threw for 346 yards, he rushed for 64. That's not a bad game, but he was 22 of 37. And that's very inconsistent. That's 15 passes that you miss, or 15 passes that the defense were able to
Contested.
contest.
Yep.
Yeah, that you didn't complete. So that's inconsistency. And especially a lot of that happened in the second half. He lost a fumble, I believe, in the second half. That defense came out and punched them right in the mouth. And they showed why they were, Jared Verse. He's the one, right? He
I
showed why
told you.
he's the top 5 pick. Probably coming up in next year's draft. He
Yep.
dominated that game. And then you said it, Keon Coleman, right? Keon Coleman and what's his name, Johnny Wilson. But both of
Johnny
those guys,
Wilson.
Johnny Wilson reminds me of Calvin Benjamin back when Calvin Benjamin was playing for Florida State with Jameis Winston and company. And Keon Coleman, you're right, it hit the nail on the head. I mean, I see some DK Metcalf in him. I see I might be. I see a faster Keyshawn Johnson in him. You
Wow,
know
I
how
can see
good
that.
Keyshawn Johnson was. Keyshawn
Yeah,
Johnson was really good at USC, right? I see a
yeah.
faster version of Keyshawn Johnson and Keon Coleman. So I think you hit the nail on the head. I think they have the best wide receiver, best duo in the nation with one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. And they ran the football 34 times for 135 yards,
Bingo,
two
bingo.
touchdowns.
That's the key right
Yeah.
there. They were able to establish that ground game because LSU had no answer for it. But you also saw the inexperience of the LSU secondary. Both secondaries
Mm-hmm.
really came in questionable. But Izzy, remember, we've been talking about this all off season. I was high on Florida State for a reason, and they showed me why on Sunday night. Look, this might be saying something, but look for them to be a potential threat to Georgia because they have speed. They have speed and they're physical.
And honestly, I'm going to say this: Harold Perkins Jr. He didn't have such a great game. That offensive line was getting to the second level, and not many offensive lines could get to the second level on an LSU defense like
Nope.
that or SEC defense. And Florida State was getting to the second level. They were neutralizing Harold Perkins, who is going to be a great player this year. But I mean, they just neutralized him. Mike Norvell had a great game plan for LSU's defense. And like I said, man, I just think, like you said, like I agree with you that Florida State is probably them, and maybe I don't even want to say USC, but I want to say Florida State's probably the biggest one. I think they're better than Georgia because of the fact that I think they have better quarterback play. I think they have a better offense than Georgia. I know Brock Byers is on Georgia, but I think that their defense can match Georgia. I think their defense can. I think their defense can neutralize whatever they do on offense. I think their defense is physical enough. They're fast. They have athletes all over the field. They got a home run. They got a closer in Jared Verse who can get after the quarterback, who can
Well,
disrupt things. I think Florida State's better than Georgia, and I thought they were disrespected by getting that 4 ranking. But we'll have to see, how Florida State, if they can dismantle Southern Miss or whatever the case is. I mean, you'll
yeah,
probably see them rise up in the rankings here next week.
yeah, yeah,
Last
definitely.
takeaway: How
Okay,
worried
let's
are
hear
you
it.
about Clemson? How worried are you about Clemson after losing to Duke, 28-7?
Um, I mean, they definitely didn't look great, and when you don't have consistency at the most important position, it's definitely going to show. I mean, look, they went from Deshaun Watson, who won them a national championship, Trevor Lawrence won them a national championship. They thought DJ Uiagalelei was going to be the savior, but he was inconsistent. And I know this was game one for Cade Klubnik, so let this kid get his feet wet, but they did not look good. Duke was ready for them. Duke sat on that line of scrimmage. They were physical. Izzy, we talk
Mm-hmm.
about it all the time. And word to Coach Rock. Shout out Coach Rock, by the way, man. Uh, look, he always says whenever I talk to him, if you can consistently dominate that line of scrimmage, you have more than a 50% chance of winning the football game. And that's exactly what Duke did. Clemson just couldn't get into a rhythm. And to be honest with you, I felt they took Duke a little too lightly. They said, look, we're the number 9 team in the country. Well, we just have to show up. It doesn't work like that.
So two things I have to take away from this Clemson Duke Blue Devils game. One thing I think that honestly I think Riley Leonard played a hell of a game. He's a very athletic quarterback for Duke. I think Duke was better than what people gave them credit for coming into this game. They played great defense. I think they're a physical. I think they're a physical defensive team. Probably one of the more physical ACC teams that I've seen in week one. That's one, right? Or that's one of them. One of the Clemson takeaways out of two: lack of playmakers. Lack of playmakers. Will Shipley cannot be the only guy that's making plays on that field. He had 114 yards. He had 6 catches for 29 yards. He had the lone touchdown for them in the receiving game in the red zone. And may I ask you, may I say, that was the only and that's going to lead into my next thing: red zone deficiencies. This
Yeah,
team was in the red zone how many times? 4 times. They
yeah,
got stuffed on the 1 yard line 2 times. They could have had points 4 or 5 times in the red zone, and they just only scored 1 touchdown in the red zone. That's not going to cut it. And I don't know if the team is kind of, let's see how they respond. This makers is very concerning for Clemson. They're gonna need Antonio Williams and Bo Collins to really step it up. I mean, those guys, have 56 and 50 yards, but we need to see 100 yards. We need to see 80 yards. We don't need to see drops on their part. Guys were dropping the football for Clemson when K. Klubnik was delivering the football to them. I mean, it was just all bad, and it has to start with the push on the offensive line. They have to be physical as well. I think Duke was more physical than them in the trenches, and that's concerning to me. I don't really see that out of a Clemson offensive line. I usually see when they get in the red zone, they punch it in, right? They didn't punch it in at all when they were in the red zone. Duke was just swarming them. So I'm a little concerned with Clemson. I mean, they dropped all the way down to number 25. I think in the ACC, this is Florida State's division to lose. And I think the days of Clemson dominating in the ACC are going to come to an end very soon here.
Yeah, I think this is Florida State's conference to take over now. And I think you hit everything on the head. I don't really have anything to piggyback on everything you just said.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, Clemson has to fix those red zone deficiencies. I'm pretty sure Dabo was in the lab all week, really hard, probably working hard on them on that. I mean, defensively, they did what they could do. I mean, obviously, they're a better defense than what they did. What they need to they need to contain, running quarterbacks. Because you're going to see a bunch of them in the ACC. You're going to see a Jordan Travis who's got athletic ability. You're going to see a Drake May who has athletic ability. You're going to see guys that can run out the pocket. In the ACC, so you're gonna have to contain the quarterback, and something that they didn't do against Duke. So, looking at the Week 2 AP Top 25, I'll start from number 1. We got Georgia at number 1, 2 Michigan, 3 Alabama, and 4 Florida State as they jump up 4 slots in the top 4. And I mean, if the season ended today prematurely, those would be your college football playoff teams right there, Christian. And I think that's what you pretty much had at the beginning of the season, right?
Yeah, it was. I had Georgia as the 1. I had Michigan as the 2. I had Florida State as the 3, and I had Alabama as the 4. So just flip-flop Alabama and Florida State.
Yeah, so I think all 4 teams. I think all 4 teams are definitely deserving to be in the top 4. I think Florida State should be a little higher. I think Michigan last week. Who they played last week? I can't remember. They didn't come out as strong as I would like to hope that they would.
Yeah.
Neither did Ohio State, which is why they dropped a couple slots. Who's number 5? Number 6, we got USC. 7, Penn State. They both stay the same. 8, Washington. Washington looked really good. Michael Penix Jr. looked really good against Boise State at home. That team's going to be consistently in the top 10 this year. And they're vying to win the Pac-12 this year. And number 9, we got Tennessee, and then round out the top 10, we got Notre Dame here moving up 3 slots as they creep back up into the top 10 for the first time this season. They have a tough road test here against NC State, as we'll get to. And number 11, we got Texas. Number 12, Utah, beating Florida, getting the revenge on them, going up 2 slots at home. Utah, and they should get better as Cameron Rising gets back on that field. And number 13, we got Oregon. Number 14, LSU, as they drop 9 slots. I expect LSU at 14. I expect them to have a bounce back win. I think they play Grambling State this week. That should be a win in the books right there. But I think they need that. I think they need a win in their books. I think they need to get that mojo back offensively and defensively before they start playing the SEC play. Right. Then at number 15, we got Kansas State. 16, Oregon State. 17, North Carolina. Number 18, Oklahoma. Number 19, got Wisconsin here. And they got a tough test going into Wazoo this week that people aren't really talking about. That's going to be a pretty good game there. At number 20, we got Ole Miss. 21, Duke. That's the team. They rose up, 18 slots here in the top, into the top 25. So, Duke going, creeping up into the top 25 at number 21. And then at number 22, we got Colorado. We just talked about them. I don't even know how many slots they jumped up. They probably jumped up about 20-something slots because I know they were in the 50s when they started the season. So they jumped up that many slots after beating TCU in that fashion. And then at number 23, we got Texas A&M, 24, Tulane. And then rounding out the top 10, we got Clemson at number 25, dropping 16 slots for the week here. So moving forward to our games to watch this week, number one on the slate, we got Nebraska at number 22, Colorado. How do you see this panning out?
It's going to be a physical football game. Yeah, I know Matt Rule's probably been in the lab, and he said, look, let's run this football, and we got to get continued pressure on Shador Sanders. Let's force him to hand that ball off, or let's force him to run, because he's not beating us, and he's not throwing for over 500 yards. Plain and simple. I think this game's going to be a lot closer than people anticipate. I like Colorado, but don't expect this to be a blowout.
Absolutely. I would not expect this to be a blow. I think it's going to be a closer game than what people think. This is an old school Big 12 game as well. So, and they're rivals, longtime rivals. So this is going to be a hell of a game here in Colorado. So I expect numbers to get put up. I expect Colorado to, do much of the same. Against CCU, get the ball out to their playmakers, which they know who they are. I mean, Travis Hunter, two kids from USF, what's his name, Dylan Edwards. So
Dylan
yeah,
Edwards.
I mean, yeah. So they're gonna get that ball, and they're gonna play pesky defense. I think Nebraska's a team that has lesser talent offensively than TCU. So I think that Nebraska's defense will play a lot better this week. Not Nebraska's defense. Colorado's defense will play a lot better this week against Nebraska than they did last week.
Right.
Next game I got on the slot, number 10, Notre Dame going into NC State. This one was pretty much for me. I honestly, it's because Notre Dame, the first couple games, they played Navy, and then they played Tennessee State. And so this is their first big test. Top 10 team, Sam Hartman going back into the ACC to play NC State on the road. NC State's, no slouch either. How do you see this one shaking out here?
I just think Notre Dame is the far more superior team. Yeah, NC State might be a little scrappy. They always have been under Dave Doran. But look, I like Notre Dame. Sam Hartman experience continues, baby.
Yeah, I like Notre Dame too. I think Sam Hartman, has been a godsend for them. I think the quarterback. They haven't had a quarterback like this since Brady Quinn. I don't even want to talk about Jimmy. I don't even want to talk about Jimmy Clausen. Okay, that's not. I don't even want to talk about him. Okay, he was supposed to be the next great hope, and he didn't show up. But this man, Sam Hartman, is for the real deal. And so I have to compare him to Brady Quinn because that's the last time Notre Dame had a great quarterback like this. But I have to give a shout out to Audric Estime, man. He's one of the best running backs in the nation. He should be a finalist or one of the finalists for the Doak Walker Award. So and he's a physical runner, north-south runner for Notre Dame. So I do like Notre Dame to win this game on the road. Going into our next game, number 20, Ole Miss going into number 24, Tulane. How do you see this one shaking out here?
I think the ball is going to fly all over the field in this game. Lane Kiffin is one of the best offensive minds we have in college football. And Tulane, you saw what they did just a couple months ago. They were able to hang with USC in the Cotton Bowl. I think maybe over 45 points went decide this game, but I'm going to lean toward Ole Miss, Izzy.
So, man, this is a tough one, man. That crowd's going to be raucous in Tulane. Last year they had a guy by the name of Tajay Spears. He's the backup for Derrick Henry right now in the Tennessee Titans, and he was the Sugar Bowl or the Cotton Bowl MVP last year with 4 touchdowns, over 200 yards last year against USC. They don't have that, but they do have one guy, and that's Michael Pratt, right? And Michael Pratt throws a very nice, good deep ball, and it's accurate. And he does have some really good weapons on the outside. Last week, I believe he threw for 4 touchdowns last week against Southern Alabama. Ole Miss on the other side, on the flip side, Ole Miss, they have one of the best running backs in the nation in Quinshawn Judkins. Ran for 1,600 yards as a true freshman last year. He's looking to continue that this year. I know more eyes are on him. You got Jackson Dart, who's a hell of a quarterback as well for Ole Miss. I'm actually going to lean with you, Christian. I actually am going to go with Ole Miss. I think too much of Quinshawn Judkins. I think he's going to run all over that defense. They haven't seen a running back like that in quite some time. They didn't even see that against USC when they played them in the Cotton Bowl. Definitely didn't see that against last week. Last week against Southern Alabama. So I think Ole Miss and Quinshawn Judkins are going to be key in this game against Tulane on the road. Reaching into my next game, we got number 23, Texas A&M, going into the Miami Hurricanes Stadium. I don't even know what state they play. They play in that, what I don't even think it's, what is it, Pro Player Stadium? Was it Rock Hall of Fame? What is it? What is it? Hall of Fame Stadium? What is it? What's the stadium called? They play where the Dolphins play.
Yeah, they play. I think it's like Hard Rock Stadium.
Hard Rock Stadium.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm gonna be completely blunt with you here, Izzy. Texas A&M just hasn't done it for me since Jimbo Fisher's taken over. They've had one really good season, and that was 2020, and they were on the outside of the college football playoff, and they won the Orange Bowl against North Carolina. But outside of that, Jimbo was bought to College Station to do what? Elevate this program to the next level. He hasn't done it. And at Miami, they've had some down years. I remember 2017 when they were consistent, and then they ran into Pittsburgh. Everybody thought Miami was a shoo-in to make the playoff, but they ended up losing those two games. And here's a couple things I'm looking at in this matchup. One, can the Texas A&M secondary, can they hang with these Miami receivers? Because Colby Young is the real deal. 6'4", 215. Did you see his first touchdown last week? He's not just a possession guy. He's a guy that can go over the middle. He can catch that screen pass, and he can take it to the house. He has the ability to make a game-changing play no matter where the ball is lined up. And then can Texas A&M, can their offensive line hang with this depth of the Miami defensive line? Because they have some playmakers on that defensive line, but all in all, I think Texas A&M is the far more talented team, and I'm going to take the Aggies here.
That defensive line is pretty sick for Texas A&M, and last year Miami went into College Station and lost 17-9 in a close game last season.
Yep.
I expect a close game as well. When I look at Miami, I mean Mario Cristobal got this team running the football. I mean they had a hell of a rushing game, 250 yards rushing last week against Miami of Ohio. So that's something to look for. That's something to look at, especially against this defensive line that's very dominating. I'm actually going to go Miami to win this football game. I think Tyler Van Dyke. I think he'll be a difference maker in this game. I think another year with him under center. But I do think, man, I think this Miami rushing attack is pretty damn good. I mean, Henry Parrish Jr. had 90 yards. He's a big playmaker. He had 90 yards and a touchdown last week. So I do expect Miami to kind of run the football there. They have a bevy of guys that can get it done. So I got Miami winning this game at home against Texas A&M and avenging that loss. And possibly they might jump into the top 25 next week when it's all said and done. And then I say the best for last, Christian. I know where you're going with this one, the big one. Number 11, Texas, going into Tuscaloosa to play number 3, Alabama. I already know. Can I say it for you? Can I say it for you, baby?
Come on.
This is Christian's shameless plug of the week.
Shameless plug, baby. Shameless plug. Remember when they played last year? Quint Ewers was chopping apart the secondary, and then he got hurt. And look, I said telling you this a year ago, and I'm going to say it a year later. If he doesn't get hurt in that game, Texas wins that game. And there's no change in my mind about it. But Texas did everything right except give Bryce Young and company way too much time. And that's when Bryce marched down the field and Alabama escaped with a win. And they looked shaky in that game. I love these Texas receivers, Xavier Worthy, Jatavian Sanders. I think he's the key for this offense. He's a mismatch. He's 6'7", 6'6", kind of cut in that Jimmy Graham cloth. Alabama, they were so efficient last week. Only committed 2 penalties, didn't turn the ball over, and Jalen Milroe didn't look bad, but I need him to look better. Texas has to start quickly because where Texas shot themselves in the foot last year, in the red zone, when you're playing a team like Alabama, You gotta be able to score. You're not gonna beat this team kicking field goals. Alabama, I want to see how they come out defensively against this Texas offense because Texas isn't going to man up and get those hard yards. Like Alabama's going to put this game in Quinn Ewers' hand. I preview this one tomorrow. Izzy is always the first person to see it, so be on the lookout for it. The DailyBlitz.blog.
Absolutely. And I just dropped the link into the podcast. So you guys better not, you have no excuses to not read, not get on the dailyblitz.blog and look at Christian's content as football is getting in the full swing of things. Man, Jalen Milroe looked a lot better than I expected, especially throwing the football. He's 13 to 18, 194 yards, 3 touchdowns. He looks like he gained some muscle too. He had 5 total touchdowns on the season, albeit, I mean, they did play against, what was it, Middle Tennessee State, so, I mean, the talent is not there. But when I look at Texas, I think, a guy like Xavier Worthy and Quinn Ewers, I mean, Xavier Worthy is one of the best wide receivers in the nation. Should be first 1, 2, 3 rounds in the NFL draft when it's all said and done. I think Quinn Ewers, it showed why he's a hell of a talent, beating Rice 37-10. Man, Texas played them really hard last year, and it was in Texas, and Bryce Young still pulled it out. I think Texas brings it to him this year in Tuscaloosa. I think you're going to have to see Jalen Milroe is going to have to make those plays. I don't want to count him out saying he's not going to make those plays. I have yet to see him make those plays against top-tier talent like a Texas. And I think this is Texas's time to show up this this year. So I'm actually going to go with Texas going into Alabama in the Tuscaloosa. Alabama on an upset here, as and avenging that loss as they did last year, as Alabama beat them last year. So I got Texas on the slate. So if you guys are looking for an upset to put in your parlays, go ahead and put Texas on the slate. Izzy said, because Izzy said so, and that's the bottom line, because Izzy said so, ladies and gentlemen. Anyways, swinging into our Heisman Week 2 Heisman rankings, man. At number 1, I mean, the shuffle is going to happen all year long, but I did, put in one player into the top 5 as I said I was going to do. Christian Shedeur Sanders in the top 5 Heisman rankings, man. He looked amazing. As much as I say Caleb Williams, let's start at number 1. Caleb Williams number 1, just because he's pretty much been doing the same thing he did from last year. He was great last year. Now he's great this year so far. So Caleb Williams is going to be number 1 until he has a bad game. That's 1. Number 2, I got Jordan Travis going into the Heisman rankings at number 2. I mean, the game that he had against LSU, especially the second half, where he came out and he just looked like he was in complete control. Jordan Travis is number 2 on my list. I mean, he had he was 23 of 31, 342 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, 34 rushing yards, 1 rushing touchdown. So that's 5 total touchdowns. I mean, he was on fire against LSU in the second half. So he's my number 2 quarterback, my number 2 guy in the Heisman rankings. And at number 3, I got Michael Penix Jr. from Washington. I mean, he had a hell of a game versus Boise State. There's a guy other than Shedeur Sanders who probably would have been my player of the week. It would have been Michael Penix Jr. I mean, 29 of 40, 450 yards, 5 touchdowns, 72.5 completion percentage. I mean, and he did that against, Boise State at home. I mean, Boise State's no slouch. They're not like the Boise State of the past, but Boise State is still Boise State, right? So Michael Penix had a hell of a showing. I think he's going to solidify himself as a first-round pick coming up in the next NFL draft.
Yeah, opinion. I can see it. And you've been high on this kid for the last year or so. Like, you light up when you talk about Michael Penix Jr. And for obvious reason, he's just really developed into a true playmaker. Something you weren't seeing in Indiana. Sometimes I think transferring is the best thing for these kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the system matters. I think the type of playmakers you put around him matters. I don't think that he had the guys around him, and he always had the arm talent in Indiana. He just didn't have the guys around him. He didn't have the scheme around him to really show out his arm talent. So I think Michael Penix Jr., man, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, in my opinion. And then at number 4, we got Shador Sanders, man. I mean, like I said, player of the week last week. I mean, he threw for 510 yards against number 14 TCU in Fort Worth. Shador is, I mean, he's really showed why he's one of the best quarterbacks in the nation with last week's
Yeah,
performance. And jumping in the top 5 of the Heisman is a big deal, man. I wouldn't have thought Shador Sanders was going to be a Heisman candidate at all this year. I thought he would have been good just like he was at Jackson State, but I didn't think he was going to be this good. I thought there would have been a little bit of a learning curve with the talent level changing from Jackson State to Colorado. But I mean, like I said, he's a 4-star recruit for for no reason. He's not a 4-star recruit for no reason. So Shador Sanders is that guy. And then at number 5, I got Sam Hartman, man. He's just been amazing this year. He's got 7 total touchdowns, 445 yards, completing 82% of his passes. I mean, and the thing about Sam Hartman that impresses me the most is that he switched from a spread offense to a pro style offense, and he's just as equally as good
yeah,
for
yeah. I
Notre
mean,
Dame.
I think he's trying to put NFL scouts on notice. Like, look, I can do this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then my dark horses, I got Drake May, who had a up and down game last week against South Carolina. Jaden Daniels and from LSU, and then Bo Nix rounding out my dark horses in my top 8 for the Heisman. I think Bo Nix, man. I mean, what is this, like 7th year college football? Bo Nix. Bo Nix is going to put up numbers this year, and especially this week. I expect this game against Texas Tech this week to be in the 60s. I mean, honestly, I think this is going to be a track meet of a game with them going in the Lubbock, Texas. But I think Bo Nix is going to put up numbers in a win, may I say, against Texas Tech. So Bo Nix definitely that guy this year for Oregon, and I expect him to probably jump into the first round as well. At least the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft next year as well. This quarterback class is deep. I mean, I don't have not one running back. All these guys right here
Yeah,
can go in the first round next year in next year's draft.
yeah, they can. I couldn't agree with you anymore. I
Yeah,
mean, but I want to say this about North Carolina. I was actually impressed with them because Matt Brown said they want to be more of a physical football team, and they ran the football last week. They took pressure off Drake May. Offensive line was getting pushed, getting into that second tier of the defense, and the defense got off the field. I think Gene Chizik is going to have his men ready to play. He's the new defensive coordinator for Matt Brown and the Tar Heels.
yeah. I think like this year, I think UNC is going to be a lot tougher than what they were last year defensively. A little bit more physical than what they were last year. So good things here on the horizon for week 2 as we come into as we get in the swing of things, the college football, ladies and gentlemen. But anyways, that's been a wrap, Christian. Got the early show, so you guys, everybody can go out and have a good time tonight. Make sure to please like, share, and subscribe to Prime Sports. We're here at Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And in case you missed this live feed, I have the link in the comment section for all the podcast feeds at Samsung, Amazon, Apple Music, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, ladies and gentlemen. So you don't want to miss that. And also, please catch Christian on the dailyblitz.blog as he's dropped that heat, and he'll bring his prediction for Texas and Alabama before the game starts tomorrow. So you guys don't want to miss that. Great content, Christian. But anyways, man, everybody, please drink responsibly tomorrow. I know all you college kids are going to be out there having fun, rooting on your teams, but please drink responsibly. Go ahead and put those keys down. If you did have too much to drink, there's always other ways to get around. So that's all I got to say. I always end the show like that. And in case I miss you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, Christian.
Holla at your boy.
Holla at your boy, ladies and gentlemen. Sayonara, suckers. See you next week, baby.
My man.